that I've always been documenting my life, regardless of the medium, whether I was painting or drawing or performance work or video. And just with this project, I'm really trying to encapsulate all of that within a medium that is more accessible. So the performances are in there, and visual art, and the thoughts, the conversation. So,
that makes sense.
Right?
I feel like a lot of the art practice is often documenting your own process, right? That's like part of what it is. It's your own personal process of whatever your meaning is, if it's expression and feeling or a statement of some kind. It's artistic expression. It's always like documentation in a way.
It's your life, and at some point it becomes everything merges together. You know, your practice is towards your artwork, and then your life is your practice,
yeah,
the way you live your life, you know? So I just feel like it all goes together, and I think that's one of the really important aspects of this project, is that that's one of the reasons why reality TV as a medium is possible.
Yeah. I mean, and people always get reality TV really mixed up, you know, like originally reality TV wasn't like Desperate Housewives or, you know, some sort of like mockumentary kind of style. Like it was supposed to be like Real World or Road Rules, where it was just a documentary style of an everyday kind of process and showing like all the aspects of lives of the storyline, whatever the storyline is or whatever. But now reality TV has such a negative connotation, people get mixed up, I think. I think a lot of our feedback has been kind of mixed because of that word, that phrase that we use, this reality television.
I agree. I think that's why it's important to show that if reality TV were following the lives of people who are dealing with important issues like feminism and what it's like to be a woman today and professional practices in the arts, then that would be reality TV, just at a different level, at a different caliber.
By the time I did the interior forest, I really understood that when you're inviting people in to work with you, especially the public, that there have to be like very clear parameters and expectations.
Alexandra Grant is one of my favorite living artists. Collaboration is an integral part of her practice. In her most recent project called Interior Forest, she invited members of the public to come interpret the pages of a book through drawing.
For me, collaboration, you know, has surprises, which is that you open up yourself and your practice to methodologies, personalities, experiences that you never would have had if you were just working alone. But it's also, it's more than just, you know, this is going to sound like I'm talking about romance, but it's not just 1 and 1 equals 2. It adds up to so much more because you really are having a multiplication of creativity. And sometimes it can be a radical failure, but for the most part, it's really exciting to have someone else's standards and ideas added to your own, to be something bigger than you ever set out to achieve.
One of the people that I kind of look up to in my career thus far has been my old boss, the editor-in-chief of Artillery magazine, Tulsa Kinney.
I have noticed the few times I've collaborated, like on installations and stuff like that, there always has to be the leader. So you have to let someone be the leader. Kind of. Let someone, you know, kind of, I think, doesn't have to be like, you know, a megalomaniac, you know, but at least there kind of feels like there's always someone that's kind of a ringleader, or someone has to be able to call the shots or something like that. But I do think you can collaborate with other people that have huge egos.
You know, we haven't really talked to Barbara much since she decided to leave. I know that we will, and I told you about that dream I had that was super emotional. I had this dream that Barbara called me and we were just talking on the phone. We hadn't talked for a while, and it was like emotional, and she was crying on the phone. She's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. You know, I'm so sorry I wasn't more open and honest with you to tell you how the residency like wasn't working for me." Because really, that's kind of why she ended up
that's
leaving.
the bottom line.
It just wasn't working for her, and on many levels, I think, not just 1 or 2. But in my dream, we were both crying and we're like on the phone, like, I know, I'm sorry. We're like acting like best friends again, like we used to. And then we started talking about, you know, boys and like catching up, and well, boys, me and boys, and then her and her husband, because she's been married for a while. But it was really sad, and you know, she was apologetic and I was apologetic, and we just picked up and everything was fine. And then I woke up and I was like hit with like a brick, and it was reality. Checking in, being like, oh right,
that's not how it happened.
That's not really how it happened, and it's not really how it's gonna happen. But I mean, I'm happy for her that she has a full-time job. She got a great opportunity teaching.
It works for her.
Full-time. She's making money.
You know, you have to be someone that is like really ambitious and willing to go out of the way to. You have to be a shark. You know, I mean, you just have to make it in the art world, and I'm not that way. I'm not a very good self-promoter. You have to be a really self-promoter for sure, and you have to hang out with the right crowd.
I write for a bunch of magazines. Let's see. On a regular basis, I write for Artillery, Local Arts, which is a Laguna-based magazine, Culture magazine. I used to write for IE Weekly all the time. Evolved magazine, which is a tattoo and fine art magazine. And then I just started writing for United for Good magazine, Leica magazine, and I have written for Juxtapose once before, and Art Limited once before. I used to write for Art Scene pretty regularly, but that stopped a while ago, maybe about a year ago. OC Register, I write for every now and again. OC Register magazine also. KCT, of course. That was my first big break, was Artbound for KCT. I always forget that because it's not a physical publication, you know, it's an online publication. I also write for the OC Art blog. That was like my first place I started writing for, and that's how KCT found me, it was through the OC Art blog. Artbound is an award-winning, Emmy award-winning program and publication, online and on TV. It's absolutely amazing. I've never had the chance to work with so many bright and wonderful writers and artists before KCT, and they pay well. It's like a dream come true. I love everybody at KCT. It's awesome.
I had edited for a year on Coagula with Matt Gleason. He let me take it over because he said he would, you know, he needed a year off, kind of a hiatus, and I understand that too, now being an editor. And so I edited that for a year, and I just loved it. I loved it so much. And I'd already worked at the LA Weekly, so I had worked in many capacities at the LA Weekly, like in the production department, then the editorial. So I was really kind of knowing my way around how a magazine works. You know, you've worked in a magazine and you get to really get a feel for it. But that really was kind of what hooked me, you know, kind of, I was just like, wow, I really like this. And I'm kind of connected a lot in the cultural world because of working at the LA Weekly. Sure. So I had access to a lot of writers, you know, and then my husband, Charles Rapley, also worked at the Weekly. He had started many magazines. We co-founded it. Basically what I wanted was in between Coagula and Art Forum, kind of like. Coagula was kind of too gossipy and didn't take itself serious enough for me, for my taste. And I enjoyed it. I really like it, or liked it. It doesn't really exist. So I wanted something in between because I wanted it to be taken seriously enough, but I also wanted to have a sense of humor too.
You know what the worst part is about being an arts writer? Or a journalist for any publication, really. It is the crippling anxiety that comes with catering to what other people want. I suppose that's part of the stress with being an artist also, but as a writer, it's hard to even keep any confidence in what I'm doing after a while. I just got my ass handed to me yet again for some feature article that I wrote. You know, I write for 1 million publications, and they all have different styles, they all want different things, and they're different features, and they make it seem like it's simple and it's easy and it's straightforward, but it's not, because every single publication has a different way of doing things. It's really fucking stressful, and I don't quite know sometimes how to deal with it. I just have to swallow my pride just a little bit deeper, just a little bit harder, take the criticisms, and make the changes that they need. That's all I can do. Or I can give up.
You have to be focused and you have to be disciplined. Resilience, intelligence, I bet sharks have all these traits. I don't see as negative things, but how do you have the focus, determination to go after your goals that you've set for yourself? Right? I think the most important thing about being an artist is understanding the goals that are sort of cliche goals and the goals you have for yourself about your own life, what you want to say, what you want to mean. Who, if you were a book, who would be the books on the other side on the shelf next to you? And setting that kind of goal, that's again up to you, up to that person. But I would say, in the art world, you have to be cautious. You can't be a complete naive person. Right? But there are people who come to the art world for different reasons. And a lot of artists start out with more innocent ideas of self-expression or idealism or even love, I mean, some basic ideas. And then learn that there's the business side, which has a different kind of rigor. And so often those people are called sharks or are called stronger words than that. But you just have to learn how to deal with them. They're in every business, and especially every creative business. The people who are in the business of art. But I don't see a real problem. The most successful artists I know have lawyers, have a whole bunch of people who help them be able to stay focused on what they're supposed to do. And they take care of themselves.
In the last 2 years, I have exhibited work in a museum, a show juried by Alma Ruiz of MoCA, a show juried by a curator of MoMA, done a mural, gotten this residency, and some of the projects have been funded, but I still am not making money, and I still feel like, well, what do I need to do? You know, what does it take to be truly successful, or even to be perceived as a professional artist? I mean, what is that? What does that mean to be a professional artist?
A question that I have to answer on almost on a daily basis. There was a photo shooting at my studio yesterday with me and the new yarn bombing leaders. It was supposed to be, you know, talking about and they kept on questioning, so again, how do you make money off of this? Why do you do this? If you're not making money off of it, if you're not rich, then why are you doing it?
Yarn bombing is a type of street art created by attaching knit materials to the urban environment.
Yarn bombing transforms knitting from a domestic activity to public art, recontextualizing both knitting and graffiti.
Yarn bombing Los Angeles began with 2 group shows, Big Knit On and Yarn Bombing 18th Street.
Could you tell me what social practice is?
Yes. Social practice is the idea, there's 2 different things that we're dealing with here, 3 if we really get into them. Performance, and that's going out and doing the performance piece. And it's not exactly like theater, but it is like visual art in the way that it doesn't have a direct storyline and things like that. And then social practice engages the idea of dealing with community a lot more. So I'd say our biggest social practice piece is the feminist performance, the feminist confessional, where we engage people coming in.
A lot of social practice artists don't often get the understanding or recognition that visual artists get. It's harder to see their work because it's more performative and collaborative based. It often falls under the guise of relational aesthetics, which really does rely heavily on the understanding of the human brain and how we perceive things. I was really impressed by Ingrid's performance, the gorilla gowns that she coordinated and collaborated on with the Nine a couple years ago when we first met. I'm equally as impressed with her hard work and creative insight in life of an artist. A lot of her work is done behind the scenes, but it doesn't make it any less important or interesting.
For me, feminism has to be a conversation. And it's a conversation about power and sharing power that happens between every human who deserves fundamental equal rights. And so as long as people don't have equal rights, feminism has work to do. And feminist art that is feminist, to me, doesn't have enemies that there shouldn't be. I mean, there is art that people say, oh, that's feminist art, and you think, Virginiatics or Judy Chicago, that there's these cliches, but I think feminist art is any art, that any kind of artist that opens up a dialogue around power difference.
Would you consider yourself successful in your career?
Oh, I don't feel that way.
Really?
I know, and that just blows people's mind. I guess because I really want the magazine to be more successful. I don't really make a living wage, so that I equate with success, you know. I mean, although a lot of people will always say, oh, this is a success. I mean, we are starting our 9th volume. I'm still very enthusiastic about putting the magazine together, and I love doing it. And I guess so, but maybe I'm somebody that just, you know, will never be satisfied. I don't know, but I guess it's a success that it's lasted this long.
Absolutely.
Right.
And everybody loves it and respects it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that too. Thank you.
It's successful.
Thank you.
Maybe not, monetary.
Right. I mean, I don't, you know, and then when people tell me that, I'm like, really? I mean, I'm just like...
You're surprised?
I guess. Maybe that's just my, you know, low self-esteem or something. But, anyway, so yeah, I guess it's successful, and I love doing it, and I want it to be even more successful. I would like to make more of a living wage. I would like to pay my writers a lot more. I'd like to pay everyone that I work with a lot more, you know, so I would like it to be more successful that way.
The money is how people deem success, but even in the art world, it's not changing because Tulsa doesn't think she's successful because she doesn't meet that monetary scale. Mm-hmm. So I think there needs to be a radical shift of how we talk about success in the art world.
Well, it's just so hard to have a career in something that doesn't actually make you any money. You know, like if you're spending, 40 hours a week is the traditional full-time job kind of idea. If you're not making any money doing your full-time job, then how are you successful at that job? You know, that's a difficult question.
And what's fascinating is that this is also what Nicole was saying about art and commodity and feminism. So if anybody's going to change that standard of success, it's feminist art and feminism. Yeah. And that's what I meant in the last episode where I said that feminist art has already succeeded in doing that, because it did change the way galleries had to deal with artists when they were creating non-commodity based work. So how does a gallery represent an artist, and how do they make money, and how do they still function within obviously capitalist society without creating commodity based work? And so it is a really interesting that's kind of something that comes along with us somehow, you know, that changing that model of success.
One of the things I try to teach about, especially to young women artists, is to talk about success. What would it look like? What do I need to prepare for? What are some of the hazards of success? What happens when people recognize me? Or what happens to my ego? Or what happens, heaven forbid, that I get a large amount of money on one single day? Am I prepared to know how to handle that? And that's the nitty-gritty. Do I have a bank account? Do I have an accountant? How would I, sort of make those arrangements? And then what happens, because this is what happens with artists, I'll make a ton of money in one day, and then I won't make any money for a year. How do I learn how to manage the ups and downs?
Carrie Yury, who was on our panel a few months ago, I went to hear her speak at the CAA conference when it was here in LA, and I know. And she said, she gave this whole big speech about 10 years postgraduate and what that means as a professional artist and what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to feel like and what you're supposed to accomplish. And she's accomplished, but she said that she didn't feel accomplished at all, and she had gallery representation a couple times, and then it went away and it came back, but 10 years post-grad, and she said that really the only thing that she had was her professional practice. Wow. That's all she had. And she had these things that she did kind of routinely, traditionally, like you make time for studio time. You make sure to treat it like a job, like you go into your office for hours. You do 8 hours a day or, 15 hours a week or some, you set yourself some sort of time goal, you set accomplishments, you do, you try to accomplish the things that you set out. You have goals for long term, you have the 5-year plan and the 10-year plan, and you kind of treat it like a job. And she said that that's the only way that she was able to maintain it at all, is to treat it like it was a real responsibility and not just like a creative expression, which is what you think when you're younger, right? You think it's, oh, I just want to make art. Well,
that's
yeah.
why it gets so confusing.
Right.
What I hear and understand is that professional practice is what we have, then it's the way we live our lives. It's our life again. Yeah. So it's meditation, it's drawing, it's conversation. It's finding meaning in life and then turning it into something artistic.
When I do teach, it's something I often tell my students, which is you're building a life, you're building a creative life. You're not, first, you don't have to be an artist just because you're in art school. You're here to have a mind-blowing education that makes you responsible for learning and creativity. And then, the students are looking at you like, what is she saying? You just paid $50,000 for that. But that you really encourage someone to think about building a whole life, and whether it's having a family, having a relationship, having a relationship to food, to nature, to home, all these things that are so key to creativity that aren't discussed in art school. Exactly. And so, I love seeing an artist, a woman artist who's a mother, like that, because you're not saying these things are separate things and I'm going to compartmentalize. It's I am a whole, and it's something, the only advice that I try to preach to other people is the advice I give myself. Like I have to have it be something I say to myself. So this idea of life, and it's not just life balance, of I want to live a life that's authentic and interconnected, and that the home life in some ways is tied to the book life, which is tied to the studio life, which is tied to the weird curiosities. I mean, that there really is a more holistic pattern where the art isn't this separate thing.
It's so hard to find your place as a professional in the contemporary art world, and it seems twice as hard as a mother, especially after the panelists confirmed all my fears. So now that I'm so aware of the difficulties that I will face, I have this new part of my practice, which is reaching out to artists who are mothers, because they've done it, and I want to hear the success stories. I want to know how they do it and what they do. Come here, baby, mi amorcito. Very opportune time.
Right.
When it's quiet time, it's part of my quiet meditative time, And within that, I do a lot of things, but I also have a lot of time to think about this project and to think about my next projects. And that's the saving grace for me, because I don't know how people do it, really. I mean, if you take into consideration how much work it is, and there's a different type of job that requires, like painting, for example. I spoke to this really great artist, Lydia, I was like, how do you do it? You know, you have 2 kids, and just give me advice. I need to know. I need to hear the positive stories now, because I've heard a lot of the downsides. And she was like, you know what? I didn't paint. She was very straightforward. I didn't paint, and you know what? The art world could wait. I focused on my kids, and nothing happened. She was like, I waited a few years, and I picked up a paintbrush again. And I thought that was really great to hear, because sometimes people act like if you stop painting, you're never going to paint again. And I want to include painting in my practice again. I want to paint again as much as I want to establish myself as a social practice artist. I want painting to be in there.
Yeah, you don't have to be one medium only kind of artist. That's not really how creativity works.
Right.
How do you recommend showing as somebody who doesn't have a master's? Just I've heard of students just organizing group shows.
Yeah,
things
get
like
together,
that.
get with, people that everybody is supportive of one another. Get in a lot of group shows. Don't turn anything down. You're a staged career. Yes, you've got to get your name out there. You've got to get your name has to be, you want your name to become recognizable. So you've got to get your name out there.
When I was younger, I always talked about it as being a bucket, which I have no idea. So I always thought, like, I have a bucket where I put 10% of myself into, and that's my art bucket. Now I say that, and it sounds just totally ridiculous. But one of the things, and a friend said it to me when I was much younger, is, oh, we know you work a full-time job, but we would never think of you as being anything but an artist. So I always was very clear that even though I couldn't put my full self into my art bucket, that I was still an artist, that was who I was, and that's where I was going. And here in Los Angeles, when I teach students, most people, lucky people, have cars. So, especially as painters, well, your first paintings have to fit in the car, right? And so all your initial bodies of work, first initial work and then bodies of work, all fit in your car. And then you graduate to a point, oh, I have a studio. So then you have a little bit more room.
The best advice that I've gotten post-grad has not been, make what you want to make.
No.
That's what all my professors have told me, which is great.
Really?
And not all of them, but like...
That's surprising.
That's what people think.
It's their make what you want to make. And so the best advice that I've gotten is treat it like a job. Go in. I don't care if you have inspiration, her words. Go in without inspiration and just paint. Because being a painter or a sculptor, she's like, just make stuff and don't rely on creative energy. Yeah, that was Gloria.
Yeah, she's so great. Yeah, she knows what it really takes to be an artist, and she's represented a lot of great artists.
Through our research and reaching out to so many great female artists and writers, we were able to get some really great advice. It's great advice for up-and-coming artists or artists who are fresh out of grad school. Alexandra has tons of experience in burgeoning art forms and had great insight into how to manage your professional practice, regardless of the medium. Tulsa had great insight into a writer's life, but she also gave some good advice for artists right out of school, and on behavior and life skills in the art world. Through this project, Ingrid and I have been able to meet and pick the brains of so many powerful and talented women. I wish I had the opportunity to see and hear all of this great information when I was fresh out of school. I think it really would have helped my path. Thankfully, Sydney, fresh out of school, is learning more about the art world and the way to manage a life as an artist than we ever thought imaginable. And the women who are collaborating with us and participating in all these conversations are helping us truly carve out a clear path for future female artists trying to pave their own way to success. To create and manage a professional practice as an artist is going to be different for everybody. But I think the insight given to us here has helped shed some light on a few ways to be proactive about your practice and different ways to maintain it.